Hi, and thanks for joining me in this video where it's going to be the 7 reasons Bitcoin may be the absolute best investment you make in 2025. Now, I'm guessing you've heard of Bitcoin before. You're not a total stranger to it, but you haven't jumped in yet. There's still things holding you back. And maybe you've seen people who have gotten in and done really well. Maybe you've also heard stories of people who didn't do really well. And you're wondering, how do you know that it could work for you? So today, this is the video that you need because I know that you could scour YouTube and get lots of information, but sometimes putting it all together, so where you hear the news and the implications of what that means, that's not always obvious. I have spent so much time learning, researching crypto and Bitcoin, and it's starting to click so well that I'm super excited about sharing these insights with anyone who is wanting to know what's up with Bitcoin and can it help me. So my name is Kathy Vu. Hello, if we haven't met before. All we have in this video is going to save you hours of time. And if you stick around with me all the way to the end, we'll even give you a way to save money. So if you would like that, just stick with me. You'll save time, save money. It'll be the best of both worlds. And so here we go. All right. So I am not always tech savvy, but we'll make it work. Here we go. Let's see if this is good. All right. So we got 7 reasons. And reason number 1 is now that the USA is now pro Bitcoin. Now, I am in the US, but it's not because I just love the US that this is exciting. The USA is one of the largest financial powerhouses on the globe. So when they become pro Bitcoin, that signals to other countries something. We're not just one of the powerhouses of the world. US also has the US dollar, which is the current world reserve currency. Now that's going to come into play in a little bit. But currently, what that means is a lot of the world holds US dollars. So then when US dollars start also dabbling in this crypto and Bitcoin theme park, that signals something to the world. Now, what's going on just within the US right now to show that it's pro Bitcoin is that we now have legislation that favors this new finance technology called cryptocurrency. And Bitcoin is the biggest cryptocurrency, the one most trusted, and the one that has the greatest amount of value. Bitcoin has also been officially added as a national reserve. The US has various national reserves, and they are things that the country holds because they think it's going to be strategically valuable in the future. So they have the US has things like gold reserves, oil reserves, and other metal reserves and other natural resource reserves. So it's really important that Bitcoin is a reserve of the US. Now, what else? Here we go. The USA is also pro Bitcoin because our new president and the whole cabinet that he brought in has openly supported Bitcoin. My computer works, it'll work.
Hello, Bitcoiners. Thank you very much. Hello, it's good to be with you.
So he made this speech in 2024 before he became president. And so back then, he was starting to get a really good sense of what Bitcoin can do. The previous administration was kind of anti-crypto. They were doing things like actually almost attacking some of the people in the crypto space, debanking them. They had the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, start sending Wells notices to many cryptocurrency companies, which made a lot of crypto companies scared of having businesses in the US. Now that whole thing has changed, which is great, but that allows crypto companies in the US to also start flourishing because, like I said, there's legislation in the US, the president, the cabinet, all openly supporting cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is going mainstream. It's officially supported by federal policy. And that means that as they're signaling trust, there's more trust that grows. So more other people see that, and it increases adoption because more people understand, oh, Bitcoin is a more trustworthy thing. And that has allowed the price to rise. And that's just the beginning. It's just the first year of his presidency. And that seems to be continuing to march up and go forward. We're actually going to get more legislation. And that makes it so investing in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency becomes safer. There's more rules of the road. And it also has been allowing more money to come into the space because there's less uncertainty. And the US being pro Bitcoin actually has kind of like a shadow reason that most people don't know about. So I'm going to show you this. You see this? US national debt, 37 trillion. Now, I know that for me, that number is so big, I really can't even fathom what exactly that means. But now the debt is going up so much that we add an extra $1 trillion every 100 days. That's an extra 3 trillion. That's another 10% every year because it's accelerating. Why does that matter? Well, all the legislation with cryptocurrency, maybe it's because the US is actually ushering a way for it to buy and get into cryptocurrency. Because now it would be beyond the scope of this lesson right here, but cryptocurrencies can buy into the US dollar. They become a buyer of the US treasuries, which makes them a little bit more legitimate. In that way, that gives the US a buyer for their treasuries instead of basically it collapsing the currency. So now, as an investor, you're like, wait a minute. The US is starting to want all this cryptocurrency and want it to proliferate. They're doing it because the US actually is using the cryptocurrencies to be their buyer. Cryptocurrency is going to continue growing, and the US needs it to grow. And remember what I said about Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the number one cryptocurrency. It's the biggest, it's the most valuable, and it may continue being so. And now we've got more and more reasons for people and countries to want Bitcoin. I'm hoping that things are starting to ping in your mind. So let's go back to where we were. All right. Reason number 2. Wall Street is buying Bitcoin. Companies are adding Bitcoin to their treasuries. So companies that have nothing to do with Bitcoin are seeing the price of Bitcoin rise. They're realizing Bitcoin, you would have the top asset 12 out of the last 15 years. So they're starting to realize that. They realize that Bitcoin is growing 50% a year on average, and it can help them, not just individual investors like you and me. It has been helping us for those who are getting it. So now Wall Street is realizing this. Companies are realizing this. So they're starting to buy. Tesla, MicroStrategy, which is now Strategy, GameStop, 134 others, but that's companies around the world. Okay, not just US companies. ETFs, money management firms, large money management companies are starting to put millions and millions into Bitcoin. And when they do, they can actually turn it around and sell their services, hoping new investors get into Bitcoin too. It's almost like greasing the wheel. And this is new, only the last month, that now retirement accounts like 401ks are now approved to hold Bitcoin. And that's another like 12 or 13 trillion dollars that can now find its way into Bitcoin. Now, when you start talking trillion, me too, I think it's too big of a, well, at least I think it's too big of a number to calculate. But Bitcoin, all of Bitcoin around the world is about 2.5 trillion. 2.5 trillion. So when another 12 or 13 trillion can take some of their some of that value and start being able to be trickled into Bitcoin, Bitcoin will grow even more. Think about your 401k. And this is another thing that blew my mind. Of course, when I had a 401k, I couldn't invest in Bitcoin. And so I had to use money outside of any retirement fund. But now they made it so that instead of putting your 401k in index funds, which is giving you what, 10%, 12% maybe in the stock market, you have an opportunity in your 401k to put it possibly in a Bitcoin, which is growing at 50% a year on average. In the future, what do you think most people are going to do? And would that cause Bitcoin to grow even more? Now, here's another thing that I just recently realized. Wall Street is buying Bitcoin. I kind of knew that. It makes sense. Bitcoin is an investment. Wall Street should invest. What's the other thing that everybody tells us to start investing in? The hot theme, the hot narrative for investing. AI, right? Let's all say it together, AI. Did you know that AI needs something like cryptocurrency? Because think about it. In the future, we're going to have all these AI agents. They're going to need to do work for us. Most of the things are probably going to have some sort of cost to it. And in AI, they're not going to have cash, not going to have a credit card. They're probably going to need some sort of digital capital, digital resource, something that has value, a payment system. And that's going to be crypto. And so Bitcoin is that largest, most trustworthy, most valued crypto in the space. And that's kind of going to underpin all the value in the crypto space. That's why when Bitcoin goes up, almost other things go up. And when Bitcoin goes down, almost the entire cryptocurrency market crashes. Bitcoin is the leader. So if AI starts proliferating, everybody wants to invest in AI, and AI probably is going to need cryptocurrency. It's going to be a synergistic growth. Wouldn't it make sense to own the most valuable cryptocurrency? That would be Bitcoin. All right. So Wall Street and retirement funds, if they're buying, then it's no longer a fad, right? Bitcoin is no longer like a transient thing. Big money is coming in that increases demand for Bitcoin. And the price normally reaction is that it rises, right? And what you see, or who you see in front of there, those are faces of Wall Street that you may recognize. Kevin O'Leary and Mark Cuban. Maybe YouTube, Google what they're saying about Bitcoin. Next is Kathy Wood. She's the CEO of ARK Invest. They specialize in disruptive technologies, and she's been speaking about Bitcoin and Ethereum cryptocurrency markets for several years now. I'm going to bring her up in a little bit as well. Next on the bottom row, we have Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You might recognize him. Larry Fink. I didn't know his face until I really got into finance. Excuse me. Larry Fink, he's the CEO of BlackRock. And they recently started buying tons and tons of Bitcoin. They themselves are already valuated at $11 trillion. And they're starting to put more and more money in Bitcoin. So if Wall Street and retirement funds are all buying Bitcoin, this is no longer a fad. It's no longer just something that crypto bros do, right? Big money is coming in, and that increases demand, and you end up with a price reaction. And that's what we have been seeing. So when you start investing, if you start investing now, you will be in good company with the rest of Wall Street. And so reason number 3, and this has to do a little bit more with your pocket as well. When prices rise quickly, so we're talking about inflation, Bitcoin helps to protect your money. How does that work? So you've probably noticed that, especially over the last 5 years, maybe even 10, the prices of things have been creeping up, haven't they? Gas, groceries, rent. And even if you're saving money, when the price of everything else goes up, you're actually losing purchasing power, right? The amount of money you've saved no longer goes as far as you wanted it to. And when that happens, how can retirement or future dollars really keep up? It's hard, right? And maybe you've been noticing that in your bank account and your retirement accounts. How do you fix that? And that's one of the key problems that Bitcoin solves. Now, exactly how it solves that would be beyond the scope of this particular lesson, but I definitely, in the courses I teach, we spend a little bit extra time or to make sure everyone understands that and how it all comes about. But in like 30,000-foot view, what's happening is that the money we're using, when we hold it, when we save it, if we park our investment dollars in it, they have a certain value. But when there is higher inflation, as we've been noticing in the last several years, a lot of that might be because the government is taking on more and more debt. Our debt keeps going up. And so, how many times have we heard, oh, the Congress has to show up and increase our debt ceiling because the government is just spending more and more? So, in a way, it's almost like a teenager with a credit card and they're not paying off their limit, but they keep spending. They're taking on more debt. But do they have a way of paying that off? The way to pay it off is either to stop, well, actually, I don't even have to tell you, I'm sure you know. But the government, unlike a teenager, also has the possibility of printing money to pay off their debt. And they do that because it's cheaper to just print money and pay off their debt. It makes their debt cheaper, even though it dilutes the dollars, the money, the savings, the purchasing power in your wallet. They're not concerned about that. And that's why the money has been being diluted and is no longer as powerful as it should be. So when money weakens, why? From more and more supply. When Bitcoin comes in, Bitcoin can't be printed more. It's not controlled by the government. And so when you can buy Bitcoin, it has been preserving value over time. Now, yes, it does go up and down with volatility, but notice over the past 15 years, while you and I have been investing in the stock market, Bitcoin has gone up hundreds of thousands of percent. It started as less than a penny and now is more than $100,000. So even with the volatility, over time, it still has preserved value. So that's key. Now, reason number 4, and we're blazing through these. We're going to slow down a little bit as we go forward because I want to make sure I'm explaining all of these in a well-rounded way. Reason number 4, the world is starting to buy Bitcoin. What does that mean exactly? How much of the world has Bitcoin? If you started investing now, you would be in front of 95% of the world. Only 5% of the world actually has Bitcoin. And now countries like the US and China are now holding Bitcoin in their reserves. Global payment systems like PayPal and also even major banks are starting to build with cryptocurrency. Even businesses worldwide are embracing Bitcoin and they're also offering other cryptocurrency services. So countries, they're starting to buy Bitcoin. So it's US, China, Russia, Pakistan, Bhutan, a few Middle Eastern countries as well. And now that the US has an official stance on Bitcoin, both US's friends and enemies are probably going to want to buy some too. Now, if you don't have a finance background and you're like, okay, I get that Bitcoin's going up. I get that people are buying in, but there's something in the middle that's just, it hasn't cemented in my mind. And I remember being there. So I want to give you a really good example. So it's like, boom, you got it. All right. So nations and companies are buying. And when people see that, trust grows. Okay. That makes sense. There's more buyers, there's less availability, and value rises. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Make sure that's crystal clear. So I'm going to give you a converse example first. You've been to a dollar store and you've seen thousands and thousands of plastic bauble toys or whatever, right? There's thousands and thousands, and they can be cute, but there's so much supply. There may not be thousands and thousands of people who want a dollar bobblehead toy. So supply goes up. People don't necessarily want to buy more. And so the price stays down. Conversely, Bitcoin, the part that you need to know is that Bitcoin is actually a scarce commodity. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be made. 19.5 million are already out in circulation. So the rest of the world is fighting for this next 1.5 million, and or the price goes up to entice those who already hold Bitcoin to try to sell them. Okay, so now you end up with something that has a low supply, but more and more people are entering the room. Think of like an auctioneer room. It's starting to get full of people. But the amount of Bitcoin that's available for sale over time is decreasing. What would happen to that price? Have you ever been like that? Maybe in a silent auction or something, and you've noticed that at first maybe you're the only name, but as the night goes on, there's 10 other people. And that price starts bidding up and up and up. That's what's been happening to Bitcoin. And as long as more people keep wanting to come in, it will continue happening. How do you know that's going to keep happening? Or is Bitcoin running out of buyers? Remember, the US and country nation states, big companies, they're not buying half a Bitcoin, 0.1 Bitcoin at a time like you and I can. They're buying 100 Bitcoin at a time, 1,000 Bitcoin at a time, and they just started. And that's why you're seeing Bitcoin start running up with bigger numbers. Over 100K, we hadn't seen those numbers before like 2025. Will it keep happening? Because these are the first of the countries buying it. These are not the last. So more than likely, it'll keep happening because there's more and more adoption. How many companies are in the world? The whole world. Well, right now there's 100 and some odd companies that are buying. Could there be more? The Russell 2000, and that's only US companies. So many more can come in. So reason number 5 is now. This year is usually the time we see Bitcoin grow the fastest, price go up the fastest. So, like I had told you a little bit a while ago, Bitcoin grows in cycles. And this year is probably the time where we see Bitcoin will grow fast again. Bitcoin tends to have 4-year cycles, and the last year of the 4-year cycle tends to be when, boom, you see the big rise. Now is the stage that Bitcoin historically has seen these big price movements. So you are coming in at a great time. And that's exactly why you might have checked a Bitcoin maybe even a year ago and gone, wow, it's grown so much since January 2024 till about now, a little bit more than 18 months. Bitcoin grew 135%. Can I promise you that the next 18 months is going to be another 135%? I can't. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, what you can expect. But remember, this is the best time to start investing in Bitcoin in a risk adjusted vantage point. Why? Because volatility is actually lower and confidence is higher. So, do you have to wait for Bitcoin to bottom out before you buy? That would be great if you could, but you don't have to wait, especially when the likelihood that somebody who is not invested would catch the bottom like more than 1,000,000 to 1. Most people don't do that way. Most people will start investing and will be in Bitcoin and catch these opportunities. Can you catch the opportunities that come? I teach my students how to find those opportunities. That's really how you build wealth in Bitcoin. The person who's trying to catch the exact bottom, they'll probably miss it and think, oh, I missed it, so I didn't get in. And Bitcoin will keep rising. And they'll constantly miss it. I've never met anyone who went, I was not in Bitcoin and I happened to catch the bottom. I've never met that person. But I've met people who've gone, yeah, I started investing and I kept investing. And now Bitcoin has changed my life. Bitcoin has created 84,000 millionaires in the last 15 years. Just Bitcoin, not including any other cryptocurrency. So how did they do that? Did they make $1,000,000 in a day? No. They started understanding Bitcoin. They started investing. And eventually they'll catch a growth phase. And that's what I want for you. So if you're here, you can start investing and catch this growth phase. So it's not too late for you. And that's why it's a great time to start investing in September 2025. Now, reason number 6, the world, people, regular retail investors around the world haven't caught on to Bitcoin yet, but they're starting to. Like I said before, only about 5% of people globally own real Bitcoin. And if you get in, that means you would be ahead of 95% of the rest of the retail investors that are coming. Bitcoin is going mainstream. And as these companies continue to make Bitcoin easier and easier to start investing, and we're starting to see how many come in, and they're coming in droves. So adoption is increasing. And I'll show you more data about that right here. So this chart is not specifically about Bitcoin. I put that little Bitcoin coin in there. This chart, you might have seen it before. This is the S curve of technology adoption. So initially, you start at the bottom over here, where very few people know about a technology. And they end up being the very early adopters. And that number grows slowly at first. But we're now at this kind of general early adopter stage. We've got less than 5% of retail adopters in Bitcoin. We are nowhere near 10% adoption. So we're somewhere in here where, look at this. We're starting to get huge right before we get huge adoption. And when that happens, usually price will go up. Why? Because, like I said, Bitcoin is a scarce commodity. You got more and more people running into that auction room trying to buy Bitcoin when there's not that much Bitcoin to be bought. But there's still room for you, and it does not take a lot of money to start. You can do it with $5 or $10. So don't let all the people coming in scare you from you taking your position. The only one who would keep you out of Bitcoin is you. It's not money, it's not technology, it's not finance. Anyone who wants to start investing in Bitcoin can. And that's another thing I love about Bitcoin. The barrier to entry is actually very low. And Bitcoin in the next decade, we're probably going to find out that some of even the poorer countries adopted Bitcoin and were able to change their entire country dynamics, their country's economics, because they got in early. So there are no excuses, only information gaps to know, how do I take advantage of this? This is happening with or without you. How can you take advantage of this to make it work for you? And that's why we're here. So I'm hoping this is landing for you, that you can be a part of this and you are not too late. So another chart that I really love looking at is this chart was actually created a few years ago. And so it's a little bit older, but this is so much information right here. This is actually comparing Bitcoin adoption to the internet adoption rate. So the top right here is internet years, where from 1990s to the 2000s, people are getting more and more online, right? All of us are online. So you probably know that this is true. And we went from less than 1% adoption rate, internet adoption rate on the right, all the way to almost 100%. On the bottom right here is Bitcoin years. So Bitcoin started in 2009, but no one ever actually used it to buy anything until 2010. So we start back down here where Bitcoin was less than a penny. And over the years, so I told you this chart was actually created in 2021. And at that time, Bitcoin was about 10,000. There were times during 2021 that it was even a little bit less, but that's where it was about. And so we were estimating this, the person who made this chart was estimating, if Bitcoin grew like the internet grew, how much might it be in the future? That's what it was looking at. So now that we got an arrow right here in 2025, look where it hit 100,000. And that is kind of where we are. In 2025, Bitcoin just got over 100K. And actually, it's been sticking around. We've been bouncing around up to even 124. And I'll show you the chart of Bitcoin today. But what I really want you to get out of this particular chart is, as time goes on, where might Bitcoin be if Bitcoin continues to follow this adoption rate? Because it has been pretty darn close, has it not? So in 2030, where might Bitcoin be? Well, this is pretty darn close to 1 million, ladies and gentlemen, right here. And I know that seems like a lot. And some people might go, oh, really? Because that would be, well, right now it's a little less than 10x. So financial leaders in the space make charts like this based on other things. There are price predictions, like from Kathy Wood from ARK Invest. She believes that Bitcoin's going to be maybe even as much as 3 million by 2032. And hers is not even the highest in price prediction. There is Michael Saylor, the CEO of Strategy, who believes that Bitcoin may be higher than 13 million by 2045. So could growth like that with Bitcoin help you in your family and your finances? Now remember, these are not Joe Schmo down the road who I don't know what they do. These are respected leaders in the finance and business space. People with 25, 35 years of work in this space. And this is what they're thinking about Bitcoin. And you can Google all this, YouTube it. Michael Saylor, strategy, Bitcoin price prediction, or even Kathy Wood, or even see what Robert Kiyosaki or any of the other people that you respect in the finance space say. Now, reason number 7. So we're getting to the end. Bitcoin has outperformed the S&P 500, the standard of most of our retirement funds, most of our investment accounts, the S&P 500. If that's where we're basing most of our investments in and how much growth we get, Bitcoin has outperformed that metric by over 500% over the last 5 years. So not decades and decades, over the last 5 years. And I'll show you more specifically how we got these numbers and where this number comes from. But if Bitcoin grew by itself more than 500% in those 5 years, and the S&P grew about 60% in the same amount of time, that means Bitcoin grew many times more than the S&P 500. So like I said, you do not have to catch the bottom of Bitcoin to get value from investing with it. You understand Bitcoin, you start investing and you catch a growth phase like now, and you watch it grow. This is 5 years, guys. So this chart, ChatGPT helped me put it together. If you want to get the exact numbers I used for this, go ahead and scan that QR code. That'll give you a chart. You don't have to opt in or anything. That just gives you the numbers that ChatGPT and I were using. I did verify all the numbers independently with Google search. Most of them aren't significantly different, except for the one that I'll tell you about in a little bit later. So Bitcoin didn't just 5x. They said it was more than 5x. But I know when we start talking about big numbers, when you're not used to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, it sounds too crazy. You think, well, it has to be, like, no way. So here's the data. In 5 years, Bitcoin grew 983%. While in the same 5 years, the S&P 500 index grew 96%. The total US market, this is based on VTI, which is Vanguard's total index. Okay, that's about 90% growth, which is actually great, right? Wouldn't you want 90% growth in 5 years? Yes, right? Gold actually hit that too, about 90%. Now, US homes, these were like family homes, not all of real estate. And this was based on the Case and Schiller. I'm not familiar. I wasn't really familiar with that index or that those numbers. So what I found was that when I used average home prices in September 2020 to September 2025, and that's the date range I use for all of these numbers, it was about 5% different. So, I left the chart be. Hopefully that's cool with you. Home prices changed maybe 46%. Now, that means if you're looking at this, I know this looks super high. And part of you might be wondering, is that possible with Bitcoin? Yeah. Well, could it be a fluke? Maybe. But me having studied this, and you can do the same because we're going to look at a chart in a little bit and you'll see the whole chart for yourself. This is not the first time Bitcoin's done this. Actually, remember how I told you that Bitcoin grows in cycles? Bitcoin does this almost every cycle. And this is the fourth, we're currently in the fourth cycle. So I've seen Bitcoin do a 23x in a cycle. I've seen Bitcoin, it was before my time, but Bitcoin has in the past even done like a 70 something, I can't remember, but by then it doesn't matter, 70 something X in one cycle. So this is not new for Bitcoin. And that's why you don't want to miss these kind of growth phases when you can catch them, especially if it can make a difference for you and your family. Bitcoin ended up being the investment that I was wanting and looking for, that at the time nobody knew about. So no one could really tell me. And that's why I'm here trying to tell you guys, this could be exactly the thing that you've been wanting to find, but past news, we're giving you scary stories, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. But if Bitcoin is being bought by the country, by other governments, by countries and companies, and they're willing to put billions of dollars into Bitcoin, not just $100, $1,000, $10,000 at a time, Could there be something to this? Could they know something that most of us don't know, but we're starting to, right? So I know this sounds big. Let's go through here. You are right to wonder if this always happens. No, it doesn't always happen. And we're going to talk about this because you're right. Bitcoin is not a guarantee, it is an investment. And all investments have inherent risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly where Bitcoin will be in 2030 or 2032, if it will be $1 million. I can tell you that what we've already seen gives us a pretty good clue at what is possible. Remember, we saw that arc of adoption. And even though the chart had stopped at 2021 and it tended to be right on the money at 2025, can we get close to that at 2030 or 2032? Google, YouTube it. Kathy Wood thinks it's going to be 3 million. Michael Saylor is going to be millions above that. Tom Lee, Samson Mao, Jeff Booth. Listen to some of these other thought leaders in the space and let them tell you why they think Bitcoin is going to continue to grow. So don't take my word for it. You stick with me, I can help you get to all the information a little bit easier, but it is out there. And it's out there for you to find. So now we know Bitcoin is profitable. 84,000 millionaires in 15 years at 10x's per cycle. But is it safe? And I'm sure that if this is not your first time learning about Bitcoin, you have wondered this over and over again. And this might be the why you actually have been still continuing to sit on the sidelines. So as I talk to people about Bitcoin, I've realized that when people ask, is it safe? They're not always talking about the same thing. And so we're going to go through all the things that I've been able to help students with as they're considering this. Okay. Because sometimes when people are asking, is it safe? They're actually meaning, is it risky? And the price might go down, so I might lose money. Maybe they might be thinking, is it safe from scammers? I don't want to lose my money. Or maybe they're thinking, is it safe if I do all the right investments, that I'm storing it right so my family has access to it in the future, and or something doesn't happen where it's suddenly missing or gone, right? And all those are different ways on what you would need to learn to be safe from all of those. So it's not a single answer because those are different questions, right? So we're going to talk about these. And again, I can't go through the whole shebang because it takes a little bit more time to do that, but we're going to touch on each of these individually because there is an answer for you. So I don't want any of those is it safe questions to be what keeps you out, because there is a way to make it safer for you. So here we go for, can I lose money if I buy Bitcoin? You're going to go to www.coinmarketcap.com and you can put space BTC, which is kind of like the acronym for Bitcoin. This is an absolutely free tool to do research on cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, when you get there, Bitcoin's going to be the number one, the topmost crypto, because it is the number one crypto in cryptocurrency. And you're going to probably see a chart that looks a little bit like this. And so is my money safe in Bitcoin? Now, remember, there is absolutely no guarantees in Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is volatile. This is how volatile it can be. But I want you to recognize a few things that we're going to see in this chart. This first green candle is the top of the 2017-2018 cycle. And this is where Bitcoin got to $20,000. It had never been to $20,000 before that. that had been a few $1,000s, a few $100s. And that was a big deal, 20K at that time. And if you had been somebody who invested at 20K, after that, what you saw is Bitcoin go down. This red candle is about the bottom of that next cycle where Bitcoin was under 4K. But notice what happens. Bitcoin bounces back. The next top was $69,000. And say you had been unlucky again and you bought there and it went down because Bitcoin is volatile. Now, remember what we said about risk. There are ways to minimize risk when you start understanding Bitcoin. Are there ways to kind of avoid buying at the top? Yes. Are there ways to get yourself to try to buy it closer to these bottoms? Remember, I said if the exact bottom, highly, highly unlikely. But could you have bought somewhere down here? Yes. There are ways to figure that out. But again, it takes something that we're going to talk about just a little bit. However, the up and down cycle, Bitcoin is continuing to go up and down, but notice these next ones. They're not exactly like this, are they? So could Bitcoin be doing something a little bit different because all of the people are coming in? There are still up and downs, yeah? But they're not this, and they're not this. So I cannot guarantee that Bitcoin will not ever do this again. But what if we're coming into a time where Bitcoin is going to do this? Where Bitcoin is going to do like these, where it comes down a little bit, but it makes a new high. And it comes down a little bit and it makes a new high. If it keeps going like that, we'll never get these bottom red candles, not exactly like this. And so if some people are waiting for those, they may stay out for until they, like I was going to say forever, but eventually they'll probably be maybe one of those later adopters and realize that they were waiting for something that would come. I can't guarantee any of it, but I can say that there are ways to buy not at the top. Bitcoin long term continues growing. And that's what you would want to know. But it makes it so much juicier when you know how to buy and get a great deal, doesn't it? So, yeah, you can decrease risk by understanding Bitcoin more and knowing a little bit closer of when to start buying in those juicier times, right? So that gets rid of risk when you have a better understanding of when to buy and sell. And another thing is when you're dealing with risk, if you're thinking, oh, I need to buy today and I need a guarantee that a month from now I will have more money, that's really risky because Bitcoin's volatile. But it decreases risk when you have a better timeline. And so that's the kind of things I teach my students to almost guarantee growth because we have a better understanding of Bitcoin and we have an understanding of what timeline we need in order to be profitable. Our next point of how to make Bitcoin safer is one, stay away from scams. And there are a million scams all over the place. Bitcoin is not the only place there are scams. They're all over crypto. They're all over other credit cards. And when the gold rush was happening, I'm sure there were gold rush scams, right? It's because it has to do with money. So it's not related to Bitcoin specifically. But would it help to know what a scam looks like so you can identify it and then veer away? Would it help? So I created a tool that I give my students where if they're not sure if a scam is there, of course, they can always, hey, Kathy, can you look at this and tell me if you think it's a scam? But what I've been doing recently is using a tool that I created, especially where I'm being able to take the copy of the scam, put it in the tool and say, tell me if this is a scam. And it'll give me reasons why it is a scam, giving me the correct information, giving me the correct numbers to call if indeed it had been a legitimate email or a legitimate text. And so I'm sure that I can just delete that and go along with my day. If that would help you, there are tools out there that do that. And then finally, when you're scared of, well, long term, how do I know that I'm storing it safely? All of that, of course, is knowledge. How do I know how to do all that? Investing is safer with knowledge because knowledge is power. How much time does it take to get all this knowledge? I'm able to teach my students how to do this, usually 60 to 70 minutes a week for 10 weeks. They'll know everything they need to know to be an investor and have the knowledge that keeps them safe, as well as how to start investing in Bitcoin so that they are profitable quicker because they know how to decrease risk. Of course, I can't guarantee what's going to happen for everybody, but I am able to say that the students that I can help do tend to be able to start running. So I know it's possible for you. These are usually women who do not have any tech or finance background, like I didn't either. And they're able to do it. So I know that you can too. And you can do it on your own or with help. So here we go. Imagine if you had been able to start investing in Bitcoin earlier than now. With the changes in your finance, would they have made your today different than what they are if you had stepped into Bitcoin a little bit earlier? Do you want to keep walking the same path you have been walking over the last 5 years into the next 5? Would you want Bitcoin to help you make your finances better over the next 5 years so that you're giving and you can give your family all the things you've been dreaming about? If that's vacation, if that's access to college, that's what Bitcoin did for me. I'm a nobody out here. I'm a mom with 4 kids, and a minimum of 3 kids will be in college at the exact same time, maybe even 4. I had to figure out how to get college for all these kids. I had to figure out how to get college fund for all those kids and do it where it doesn't break my retirement. And I did it, half of it as a stay-at-home mom, the other half as like a part-time job mom. So I know Bitcoin works. And that's why I'm trying to shout it from the rooftops. If you're in that situation where you're like, hey, I don't have as much money that I want coming in, but I've got things to take care of. That's the kind of person that Bitcoin can help. That's the kind of person who needs some growth asset like Bitcoin because the stock market didn't do enough for me. So if that's where you are, maybe it's time to give this a shot. And if you want to, I'll show you how. Now, of course, yes, you can figure it out all by yourself. That is out there. There's so much information. You will be able to find the information you need. It may take a time to do it. I can tell you that it took me months and months. I can tell you that I would end up watching videos that I didn't need. So I made an easier path for those who are interested. If you would want something that could help you understand Bitcoin, take care of the things that make it safer for you, decreasing risk, avoiding scams, teaching you how to store it correctly, and teach you exactly how to make a plan written out just for you to get to the exact goal you have been wanting. Then you might want to consider if you would like to get started, because Bitcoin will help you do that. And if you would want all those things that I just mentioned at your fingertips so that you get all of that information in less than 10 weeks where you're set, then you might want to also scan that QR code. That's going to give you more information. It's not going to tie you to anything. It'll get you more information for my program called Bitcoin Abundance. Okay, it's going to be a DIY program. There's recorded videos in there. And because I know sometimes you get information, you're like, let me double check. I also added a one on one private session where you and I can sit down and talk about what is either holding you back or what are the exact steps you might need to make sure you've got the things in order where you're going to get to your goal with the special plan that is created for you with Bitcoin Abundance when you follow the steps. All right. You'll get demos, so you'll see how to do things. You'll get guidelines and you'll see all the steps written for you. We're also going to talk about how to get that exact plan in place. And it's going to be so easy that you're going to be amazed because I created a Bitcoin wealth calculator where you put in the numbers of what you have to invest, how much maybe you can add over time, how much time you've got, and how much it's going to end up with if you invest in Bitcoin. And that way you'll get an exact plan. It's, hey, I want $3 million to retire. Great. When are you going to retire? Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I need to invest here. No more guesswork. No more guesswork. So you don't have to keep throwing money in your 401k wondering if that's going to be enough. Or maybe it's not enough. Or maybe it's too much and you deserve a vacation instead. We're taking away a lot of the guesswork. So you've got what you need to know. You've got a goal and a plan on how to get there. If that's for you, click Bitcoin Abundance. And I promised you that if you stay to the end, all the information I gave you does save you time from figuring all that out on your own. And here I'm going to save you money if you click this over the next few days. And I'm only going to open this for 72 hours or less. We're going to give you a coupon code. So make sure the email that you gave me is going to get the special email that I will send out to you from kathyvu.com. So, mark it safe, stick it in your inbox. We'll give you a coupon code so that this course that could possibly change your entire finances for your family is going to be less than what you would even spend in a weekend, probably. And to make sure that you feel comfortable with this, it could be risk-free if you follow the steps, you go through the information and the checkpoints, you've done the work. And if you do not make the money back that you spent in this course in 100 days, I'll refund your money. Okay? This is just so amazing of an opportunity. I don't want anybody to sit on the sidelines thinking they were left out. I'm willing to take the risk to help you see your potential in this. If you would like that, click the link. If you have any questions, you can email support@kathyvu.com, or you can find me on Instagram at kathyvu.co. All right? Let me know how I can help. I'm hoping this was a great store of information and that you're excited. But I know that if there's anything holding you back, I don't want you to be that person who goes forward in time and looks back at a regret. That's why there is a guarantee with this course. All right? If you start, you're going to get value. If I don't give you that value, you get your money back. Fair enough? All right, let's get at it. Scan that. I will see you inside.